When I talk to human resources specialists, especially in learning and development, oftentimes the question is the organization in charge of their leaders' development, or are leaders in charge of their very own development? Now, I personally believe that both is true. And this is what we're going to discuss in today's second episode of our hybrid podcast, The Shift. And with me here today is Dr. Adrian Wade. And I'm very, very happy to welcome you here with me, Adrian. Adrian is a very experienced human resources specialist himself, with his latest station just finished with a German pharmaceutical organization. And now he is focusing on his very own organization. And I'm looking forward to everything that we are going to discuss today. Welcome here with me, Dr. Adrian.
Thank you, Sabine. Thanks for the invitation. It's a very pleasant way to start a Friday morning. And yeah, I'm enjoying the pivot. I've had a lovely 5 years with a German pharmaceutical. Thoroughly enjoyed that. But as we've sort of come to the end of that cycle, we've set up and made many changes, which I suspect we're going to talk about today and the reasons for those. I go back to my own practice. I've had my consultancy for about 15 years, primarily in coaching and consulting. So very happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation, Sabine.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Adrian, you have been sharing with me that you have been working a lot with performance support frameworks. Could you tell us a little bit about what they do, what they look like, and what the organization actually does with these frameworks?
Yeah, it sounds suspiciously like HR talk when we talk about additional frameworks in place, and in fact, it's moving away from theoretical and it's moving much more practical. And it comes from a very simple principle. So it comes from a couple of simple principles. The entire multi-billion-dollar industry of leadership development is based around developing the individual to become a manager, the manager to become a leader, the leader to become an executive. And it's focused on that individual. It's often focused around competencies. And in more modern era, we're going back to, we call it modern, but really we're circling back to 60, 70 or 80 years ago to look at a more skills-based taxonomy, a more skills-based approach in organizations. And that meets us halfway. The problem is we don't get performance from individuals. This is not an individual sport. It's a team sport, is organizational results. And we get results from teams, from networks, from systems, and from relationships in the real world. And the individual skills are, and this is an uncommon and not always popular view, the individual skills are actually secondary to those things. And there's a couple of ways we can test that. And I encourage you and I encourage your viewers and listeners to do exactly this. Be very, very clear with your people what the desired outcomes are. And many leaders struggle to even understand what the desired outcome is. Why do we employ a function? Why do we employ a team? Why do we employ that individual? And go back to those fundamentals. What do we want to be delivered into the organization or as a result from that? And if we get everybody in that system ultra crystal clear on what it is they need to deliver, to what standards and what quality within that, most people, in my experience, are smart enough to work out how to do it. If it's not their first day on the planet, if they've been working in an organization somewhere, and they're not, fresh graduate interns, they can usually work out how to do it when they're clear on what it is. And performance support frameworks are a way of building that clarity so that the leader's clear, so that the teams are clear, so the cross-functional system is clear on what they need to deliver and how and what standard. And then that's going to lead us into the bigger picture for leaders, which is, it's just not about you anymore. As a leader, it's about how do you enable the teams and systems you're responsible for to get results. And whether you're working hard from the front, whether you're supporting from the back, whether you're polishing whether you're taking obstacles, whatever it is, Your job as a leader is to show up to enable those teams and systems to get results. And your measurement of success is not about you. It's not about your executive presence in the board. It's not about the skills that you demonstrate. It's about how effectively you can pivot and enable those teams to get those outcomes. And that is not how we traditionally develop leaders. So I pause there to see, what parts of that should we unpick? Because it is quite a deviation from sending people to the business school or going on the 5-day course or the skills or the competency-based development approaches. But in our experience, the results are beautiful. The results, the penny drops, the dirham drops, and people realize, yeah, this is what I'm here to do. And we see very significant changes in behavior as a result.
Thank you so much for giving this wholesome overview of what this framework is and what the results are that can be expected. And it's true, it's not so easy to pick just one thing that I would like to unpack today, because when you already started to explain the framework and you began to say it is about clarification of expectations, I thought, yes, this is so extremely important. And yet, the vast majority of organizations that I work with are not clear on expectations. Okay, all of them have a strategic paper somewhere. They know what are the overarching strategic goals that the organization as such wants to achieve. But when we look just one level further, it already ends at what are the actual specific goals for the department, and then for the teams, and then for every individual.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, for 20 odd years, my teams, we've usually been pulled in to do the leadership offsites, right? Pull all the leaders together and we do the strategy reviews, and we'll do how has the year gone, and we'll do some exploration of that top team effectiveness. After 3 days or so, that team will go away with a warm, fuzzy feeling and clarity and mission, and they're all on it. But if I go back 1 or 2 levels into the organization, that is just very, very rarely shared. They will pull their direct reports together and they'll give the 10% overview. They might pull their teams together and it's been diluted again. And we go down to the people who are actually driving the results in the organization, and very little has changed for them, if anything. And even when the strategy might change, the way that we do things on the ground is there's a tension that's created, but clarity is very rare down there as it's moved down there. But also it can be quite intimidating for the leaders themselves. For leaders most leaders, we gotta be honest about this. Most leaders do not have the grand master plan laid out there. They're just human beings like me, you, and everyone else. Because of the curse of talent, they tend to be moved into their positions, and it's about speed. How quickly can they perform? How quickly can they demonstrate readiness for the next level? And it means many leaders are quite new in their roles. It's one of the key metrics I look at in an org. What's the tenure in current position? Is one of the key. And if that's deteriorating, or if that number's too low, it means you're looking at a strangely immature organization. An organization that could have been around for 150 years, but the average tenure in role is 1.6 years. That's a really immature organization, right? Really immature. Everybody's kind of winging it, trying to, not mess up too badly, personal success becomes a focus. So a lot of leaders are playing it safe. They want to put their stamp on it. And yeah, Sabine's done an amazing job in this, but they've not reached that confidence point where they go, you know what? We've polished everything. It's as good as it can be. It's time to change gears and move to a slightly different approach that might get us better results. A lot of leaders are not ready to do that yet. They haven't reached that level of confidence. And I think that's one of the confidence is one of the missing components in leadership ability. We're so focused on skills and competencies and, inshallah, support frameworks. But you've got to have the confidence to step up and do what's necessary. And without the confidence, the competence is quite irrelevant. Yeah, you can demonstrate in theory but competency is whether you can do something. It's not whether you do it in the real world. And confidence is one area that we develop we focus on quite strongly. And then the other thing, coming back to the first point, in the last 2 or 3 organizations over the last 10 years, I've always brought in people analytics into the HR space. I've been blessed with some of the best in the business. So analytics teams have been essential, but they don't deserve to be working in HR. We bring these analytics experts and we work on the metrics for the leaders in performance measures that matter to them, in ways of getting the data that's important to them and their functions that doesn't exist in the organization now. And that helps us move to a performance support framework with real, meaningful data that you just can't do if you're just measuring the easy things, right? We've got to measure the difficult things as well.
This is a very important point that you just made, where you said it's also about the difficult parts, directly connected, of course, to the confidence of the leaders, let me say, in question, because it's for the leaders to change their perspective and to understand that it's very important to bring the entire team in, that it's not just about them standing in the spotlight, but that it's about the entire team. So you said that confidence for these leaders is very important. And for once, I was wondering, well, what if there is a leader who says, I don't know if I can actually really take accountability for the entire team the way that it's required with this new viewpoint. But the second point is, and that is something that I, to be very honest, see in almost every coaching session that I have with executives, which is about, I don't trust my team to, for example, delegate and hand over crucial projects or important decisions. So how do you deal with
Sure.
leaders who come up with this doubt that they might be having?
That's nearly everybody. You can delegate all sorts of things, but you can't delegate accountability. If it's your shop, it's your shop. And that also applies to your boss. If you're a director, then there'll be a C-suite member above you, and they can't delegate accountability for their area either, right? They can delegate the tasks and the actions and the deliverables, but not the accountability. The same applies in your team. One of the key things I've spent a lot of my career doing executive assessment at the very top level, at CEO level, at board level, and C-suite. And we get so hung up about specific trendy competencies. We want to see our leaders having learning agility. That was 15 years ago. We want to see our leaders having all types of things that are the fashion of the day. But the core things are always going to be in place. What I really need to see is range. I need flexibility. So a lot of leaders, they get focused, and with great coaches, they'll end up building their brand. What are they known as? I'm known as the leader that comes in and gets a function unstuck. I'm the action leader, or I'm the supporting leader, or I'm the detail leader. You need to be all of those things as required, whenever required. And it's that range that if everybody knows what to expect from you, you're not bringing enough. You're just not bringing enough as a leader. So today with Sabine, maybe we need to be helping Sabine move to a fully empowered role within the team. We can fully delegate to Sabine. Now I need Sabine to be able to analyze for herself, to be able to decide on her own priorities, and to move to execution quickly without any relationship with the leader. They'll just give check back saying, hey, yeah, here's what we focused on, and they'll do that fully empowered. Now, if I was to do that with somebody else in the team, disaster. They're just not ready for that. They don't have the knowledge, the background, or the awareness for that. So that same leader needs to then pivot, and where required, micromanage, right? To really step in, go, nope, you watch, I'm going to demonstrate to you. I'm going to show you how we need to do things. And then we'll go through the full spectrum. Now I'm going to step back a little bit. I'm going to direct you, but I'm going to let you make a few choices, but I'm going to direct you onto what you do, to the point where, okay, well, 50-50. Let's talk about where we might need to be heading. with our team members, and we'll guide them, but we won't tell them. Then through delegation, then through. So whatever model you want to use, if we use situational leadership, as I've just touched on, you want to be
Mhm.
able to take people all the way around that journey. We don't want to just jump from one to the other. I can't direct and then jump to empowerment. I have to move people around the curve so that we get to a point where steadily the team is becoming more delegatable, eventually more empowerable, but we don't do that in one jump. And the one thing I've got no patience for from leaders is wishing that they had teams who were more, oh, if only my team, I could trust them to empower them or to, well, then we wouldn't need you. I'm so sorry, we wouldn't need you if that's what your job is, to get the very best from the resources that you've got available and increase and dial those resources into the challenge through hiring or development and wishing that the landscape was different, wishing that the market was different, wishing that the customers were easier, wishing that your team was a different capability. I have no patience for that. You're hired to get the best out of the results that the resources that you've got, and that's where we are here to help on that, right?
Hmm. I loved what you just described when you were saying situational leadership is not a journey that you can accomplish within a day. You can't just switch entirely from being, let's say, a micromanager for everyone into
Ever.
being a more
Yeah.
empowering leader. So I have had a very interesting experience with one leader who was constantly learning, very, very eager to learn, but everything that he learned was consumed from the outside. So it was through courses, for example, or he had mentors. But there was no learning, let's say, that happened internally. He told me that he has never done self-reflection before. He was not aware of what is actually
Amazing.
happening from the inside. He didn't know what are
Yeah.
his blind spots, what are his emotional triggers, why does he react in certain situations the way that he does. So when I ask you now
Yeah.
about the support framework, the work that you do with leaders who have to make that shift from a very, let's say, directional leader into a more empowered leader, what's the importance of self-reflection for this?
I mean, let me join the dots fully. So I gave an incomplete explanation because I could do a 25-minute monologue very easily on performance frame, performance spot frameworks. One of the all of this that we've talked about is about achieving what you've just said, being in a position to have extremely strong reflective practice. Reflective practice is the cornerstone of every developed profession. So we look at medicine, we look at healthcare in general, we look at engineering iteration, we look at every evolutionary space, we look at modern tech. Modern tech is about reflecting on the scrum that you're running right now. It's
Mm.
reflecting on the actions that have been broken, how effectively that's been done, and reassessing and going again based on reflections in the real world, how that's going. That's a task-based focus, but in our world within leaders, we've got to do all aspects of it. So the point of a performance support framework, it provides performance support. That's one part. The other side of the same coin is development. Now, development, and this is an argument we have, an academic argument we have all the time. Development is not a separate box to performance. It's literally the same coin, and on one side we've got performance, and on the other side we've got learning or development, continuous improvement. If we think of it with the CI phrase, the continuous improvement phrase, it makes more sense for people to grasp that we don't just go and perform blindly, right? We turn the handle, we do the actions, we perform, we see how that's working, we make minor adjustments or iterations, and we increase and we improve the ability to perform. If we were doing it with a new machine or a design for a workflow, you would do that. So we simply extend that to the leader, to the person and the team within that, the individual human beings. To be able to do that, Sabine, as you've quite rightly touched on, you can't do that in a classroom at Harvard. You've
Yeah.
got to do that in the real world because your triggers, your anxieties, your pressures, your personality will come out differently in theory than it will under fire, under the real world pressures. So reflective practice is a cornerstone. It's a non-negotiable of performance support frameworks. We help people to perform. We put in place all of the elements and tools that will help them to set the clarity of performance and expectation, help their teams be fully clear on what's expected of them and the journey that they go on around their empowerment. And as they do that, there are chunks that are set aside that we set the metrics and the measurements and the mechanisms. And then with a great coach like you or some of the great people I've been pleasure to work with, we really deep dive in the reflections about what's working and what isn't, and what adjustments or growth that leader needs to make. And that's where the catalyst for the leadership development happens. Because it's not a theory, it's based on the last time I was in battle, the last time this is the changes I need to make, and these are the things. And then we go try that, and we measure again, and we reflect again, all based in extraction from the real world. Yeah. And of course, we need a peer group to do that with. If we do it isolated, that's quite scary, but they need to have peers who are having similar experiences in their world. And look, if you pull people from the worst leadership development in the world, the worst programs with the lowest impact, what's the one thing that they always say? Well, I love getting together with a group of my peers and we shared war stories, and it was lovely having a cohort experience, even though the program was terrible. So we try not to lose that. We still maintain a cohort experience, but it's linked very, very much in the real world.
I couldn't agree more with what you said about the necessity to really combine development and performance, especially when we work with teams. As you said, performance is not streamlined. It's not always the same. Performance varies from day to day. Performance varies dependent on so many different variables around us, the environment, the people we work with, whatever else it would be. So, as you said earlier, there is this flexibility that is absolutely necessary to show performance, but development is definitely crucial for us also to understand what could be the maximum performance I can actually show. What else can I do within myself, but also for my team to peak our performance and to make sure that we can really develop the best work possible and that we don't have to stand still on the level of quality that we are delivering.
Yeah, look, absolutely, absolutely. There's an argument within the talent world, and my argument's quite clear on this. The best talent in your organization, and we have to come back to define what the best talent is. But the best people in your organization will often make their way through without any assistance from HR. They will network, they will find opportunities to contribute, they will understand the nature of the wider business, not just the bit that they're delivering. They will form relationships, they will drive that through, and they will do that without any development program. They will do it without any network or facilitation from talent or HR. They do not need HR to do it for them. Now, as we go down one or two levels, you've got some great people who would benefit from some support. But probably your next C-suite members would get there without you or with you. They will probably get there with or without the organization. So that's a key thing that can upset some HR people. The opposite part is also is a passion point for me. Some of the very, very best leaders I've ever worked with took a while to get there because they were focused a little bit more on quality. They were focused on others as well as themselves. Sometimes a little bit more introverted, sometimes a little bit more quality focused. So if we leave it organically, some of our loudest, some of our most assertive, we get a certain character profile that can push their way through the noise and make themselves known. I think the role that we play, and we'll link in development and skills in a moment, but I think the role that we play is to make sure that we're spotlighting the quality and not just the speed. So not just how quickly can somebody make themselves known as ready, But those who might be a bit reluctant and going, "Look, yes, but give me a couple of years to really get the juice out of this role," they may be the leader you really want in the C-suite, not the one
Mm.
who's pushing themselves fastest, not the one who's, hey, hey, look at me, look at me. No, no, don't look at them, look at me. Are they the ones that you really want leading the function at C-suite? Because they're the ones that are going to emerge if you don't provide some quality structures in there.
Mm.
But the quality, and I go, we can use 80/20 or any number that you like, really, but it's wrong to say that reflective practice on its own will get people where they need to get to. But it's going to get people a lot of the way there. It really is going to get. So a lot of people maybe haven't had the formal development. As you get more senior, you're going to end up with responsibility for areas you didn't come through. As a CEO, you probably either came through financial routes or operational routes. You didn't come through both. You were not
Mhm.
the CFO and the COO before you were CEO. Very rare. Very, very rare. If you were a more technical leader, you may have to then come into more general operations, which has got commercial and sales components. So you end up coming through your career, and at a point, you've got teams who work for you, and you haven't done their job. You can't go on the ground and deliver better than they can anymore. Now you've got to be a generalist leader, right? So it's very important that we give the 20% that's necessary for those leaders to get actually quite good in that area. But don't confuse that with being the world's expert, because unless you spent 20 years on the ground, you're never going to be the master in that space. But you've got to know enough to be able to lead it and lead it really well. And I'm afraid I'm a little cautious about generalist leadership philosophy. Um, all we need to do is have coffee with any of our operations, whatever our sector is, and they will tell us about leaders who know nothing about their area who are leading them. And it doesn't bode well. So we've got to get that to the level it needs to be. Now, then in terms of personal skills and personal abilities, I think timing is the key to that. So if we do, as Sabine, I'm sure we've all done it. If we design the course that says what's everything a leader needs to do, and we
Mhm.
can have all of those 12 or 15 topics and broken down into all of their sections. And then Sabine, you can book me on that course and you can push me through it in 4 months based on 3 modules with some coaching. And you've ticked a box. I've covered everything I might possibly need to do. Nothing's changed in the real world because the timing was not, all of those 15 topics are not relevant to the experience I'm having right now. So reflective practice, we're looking at that 3-point cycle. We're looking for the right thing at the right time, making sure that you're being briefed and primed on exactly what it is you're about to face or are currently facing. If I'm going to give you a 4-box model, it better be relevant to what you're dealing with right now. And I mean now, not next month, not next year, now, or on Monday. We've then got to help people make sense of that and map it in the real world. So what am I really experiencing and how does that compare? And then we've got to help people take the actions and reflect and improve on that as they go forward. But if I do that at the wrong time, don't be surprised if the box was ticked and they look at you blankly when you come back 12 months later. Well, yeah, well, you covered this in that course you did 12 months ago. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. You want me to remember something irrelevant from a course a year ago? But that's the industry of leadership development that we pay billions of dollars towards right now.
Yeah. What you were just saying about the right point in time to go into a specific development, to learn about a specific skill or a specific content,
Yeah,
I think that one of the most important factors here is also that leaders do really understand what is important for me right now, and that they also dare to say, okay, this sounds great, but this is not what I need right now. This is where a specific bravery is necessary.
absolutely.
That they say, I appreciate the offer, but it won't help me right now. Maybe it will be relevant for me in 12 months. And as you said as well, this is directly tied into leaders knowing themselves, but also knowing their situation and knowing their team well enough to be able to say, this is what I need right now, and this is what I don't need right now. So it all does go back to leaders being mature enough, but also to have a certain degree of humility to be able to understand this is what's good for me, but this is what's good for others. And maybe those things differ, but we need to find a way that serves everyone right here,
Yeah.
right?
Also, Sabine, I think to link to that, to build on, that's a very, very important point. And when you're on the journey, you don't have the benefit of being, elevated and looking back at where you are on your path. You're just on the journey at that point.
Mm.
Um, and that's when the blind spots can be brutal because with all of the development cultures that we've tried to put forward, most people, if you catch them today, they are the most experienced they've ever been. They are the most developed they've ever been in their life. And they are dealing with the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities they've ever dealt with in their life because it's today. It's not last week. It's not last year. You ask them to reflect on where they were 3 years ago, they can give you a pretty good picture about where they were, possibly what development might have been useful. Ask people to do that today. That's a tough one. That's a
Yeah.
tough one because I don't know what comes tomorrow, next year, I don't know what my journey is yet. So that's where Sabine, a great coach like you, other development professionals can really bring light. Look, here's what typically can happen for leaders on this journey with the type of team you've got. Here are the one or two things that could potentially be useful for where you're at. And that brings us back to the ROI question. How do we know if we're getting the benefit from any actions or development that we may be putting into? I've never had a problem with that. My mentors that taught me would come on, let's have a chat with the CEO. And we would go sit and the CEO would say, right, I need all of my leaders to go through. Sorry, I just need to plug looks like my cable came unplugged. Yeah,
Oh,
a top leader would say, I've got all of these. I need all of my leaders to go through this topic or this area because we're facing this challenge. And they go, brilliant. How do you know that? How do we know that that's a priority right now? What are the indicators? What are the metrics of that? How do you feel that pain? Or what's happening in the market that there's an opportunity and you're not seeing that return on investment right now? So the reason that you go into the development is the way that you will measure whether it was successful or not. Now, that's why I don't promote putting people through standard sheep dip courses, right? We don't bring the entire herd, dip them in the disinfectant and put them in the field, right? We look at what preparation does every leader need, and then how do we continue that reflective practice and growth in the real world based on the needs. And that's where you can assemble small cohorts of five, sixes, and sevens, take people through very bespoke journeys, but they're not unique. They're bespoke, but they're not unique. But what it means is, of my 200 leaders, I might only take six or seven through a particular journey because it's relevant to what they're facing or the challenges that they're at.
That's, I believe, the perfect approach because it also makes organizations understand if we want to invest into the right training, we can see already what the effect is going to be specifically for the leaders that we're targeting. But for organizations also to really understand, I can't develop everyone exactly the same way, which makes sense because nobody works in exactly the same position. So I love this approach of really looking at the specific needs of the individuals that are being developed. And I have to say, Dr. Adrian, the time was flying by in our conversation. And I am so, so grateful for all the insights that you've been sharing. This
My
was
pleasure.
very valuable, not just for HR professionals out there joining us today, but definitely for all leaders and emerging leaders. When we talked about the importance of the teams that you are leading, the importance of self-reflection for development, and the importance of development for performance. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Adrian. It was a real, real pleasure talking to you today.
No, thank you, thank you. Can I close on one point before we
Please,
wrap up? Yeah.
of course.
Um, there's one big sort of elephant in the room in this area, and I think you touched on the word, and that's training.
Mhm.
So if we've got a performance, and when we look at performance support frameworks or any mechanism, because the clarity and the metric is clear, we're clear on what performance is required. from the team and from the system. And that is point number one. When I work with a leader, the leader is not the client. The system is the client. How do I impact the system through the leader? And that lens can have a huge difference on how you do and on how you approach. Because I'm not trying to raise the capability of the leader. I'm trying to raise the effectiveness of the system through the leader. That can change things significantly. Once we're clear on the performance that we're looking for, and that can be cascaded and fed, and not just, hey, here's the performance I need from you, but we look at how do we connect the workflows? How does my team connect with the other team to deliver on the product or the outcomes that are needed? And we look not in silo, but in connected. And we look at how we improve those performance areas. They sit with a great coach like you, they reflect on that. Then we look at how do we improve that? Very rarely is the answer going to be send them on a training course. Very rarely is that going to be the answer.
Yeah.
But when it is, and we get back to the 70-20-10, it might be 1 in 10 times there might be a component of send you on a course, joining instructions, have your coffee at break time and go on a standard course. When we do that, it then needs to be so tailored into real world delivery because that's the purpose of it. That's the purpose. So when we're back to that CEO and they say, all of my people need to go on communications training, all of my 370 people need to go on communications. Do they now? Is that right? Excellent. Tell me why you believe that. Tell me what's the measurements and the metrics you've got around that. And when we go through that conversation, we find out that probably there's a fear culture. Probably there's problems happening that are actually not skills based or competency based. They're culturally based, or they're structurally based, or they're systems based. We make a few changes in the workflow or the system, that's likely to have an impact, not sending people on skills based trainings. So using that, it's a bullet that should be only shot at the correct target. And that at that point, I would try and shut down a lot of the industry. But what it means is when you do send people to training, it's extremely important. It's not a nice to do general theory and awareness. It's because you're expected to deliver through your systems and teams on Monday real deliverables. And I link it to technical training. So one of my best friends in the whole world is a very expert motorsport mechanic. Designs some of the best race engines there's ever been. When he or his guys go on any technical training for a new turbocharger or a new system, it's because they're expected to get outcomes from that on Monday morning. They've got to work, they've got to plug that in, they've got to work with that in detail on Monday. Our development needs to be exactly like that. We're clear on what's required, we're clear on why it's required, we're clear on the metrics of that. Now, any training we're doing is about enabling that in real, harsh, practical reality, not general. And that is the opposite in the way that the world is structured around leadership development right now.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long monologue, but I couldn't let that slip without closing.
I am very happy that you added that because I couldn't agree more. Most organizations that are ordering training are not even aware of how that training could be linked to their strategic goals, which takes us
Completely.
back to our conversation, right? So just when you ask them 2 or 3 questions, how is this actually connected to your strategic goals? How does this help the department to meet their KPIs?
But when an HR leader has got one cupboard that's got solve my problems written on it, and they open the cupboard, and the only thing on that shelf is training program, it's not unreasonable they book training programs. But what we've got to do is put other items in that cupboard to say these things are going to be way more effective than just booking people on training. I mean, we all have these conversations with, I want to send my people on this course and that course. We have the conversation. They go, look, after they've been on the course, let's have this conversation. Sometimes you have to take a loss on that in learning. And we have, this is, look, just between me and you, when they go on this course and they come back, what difference do you expect? And they'll shrug their shoulders and go, yeah, nothing really. They
Mm.
know, they know they're spending the money, but they have to be seen to be doing something. And then we'll often get, well, you always get something from all courses. You always get some benefit. Yeah, that's not really good enough, is it? That's not really good enough.
Yeah.
I get something from sending my team for a 2 week vacation in Hawaii. I get something from that. Probably not good enough justification for the spending it on business. So yeah, it is time for a change, and I suspect now is the time because I don't think people need us to provide training for them anymore. They can get it quicker than we can provide it. Right?
Mm.
This is 2025. If I want a book on a particular subject, I get AI to write me the book. If I want to read something, I want a 3 page summary on the best 50 books that have been written on this. It'll give me it in 30 seconds. Why do I need an L&D department to provide that? I don't. I need to go on a course where maybe 1 hour of that course is super relevant to my real world and 3 days is not relevant. Not a great use of time these days. And I think to your point around technology and access, I think the rope is tight now. There's no more slack. And I think the patience with this is if I'm a leader now and I got 5 or 8 million to spend on development, maybe I'm not sending people on generic courses anymore.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, time is definitely also perceived in a different way than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough time, days are too short, we have too much to do. We are surrounded by distractions coming from everywhere, information overload. So it's not making it any easier if we are sitting in a classroom for 2 days listening to a training that might be, I'm sorry to say that, but completely irrelevant for my current challenges, which also
Absolutely.
directly touches on the point you made earlier, where you said, maybe I don't need that training right now. Maybe I need it in a year. Maybe I never do. So right now I'm just sitting here, I'm wasting my very precious time, and I'm probably not even listening because I'm doing everything else on my phone. So
Yeah.
the question really is why bother, to be very honest. But that could
When
be
you
another episode for us, Dr. Adrian.
sounds like a part two, I would look forward to.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Yeah. Look, I think we touched on a number of the top areas. I think the devil is in the detail in this. How you move to it, and I've found a lot of um, discomfort with HR leaders on this topic. I've found it. Yeah, I like it. I love it in theory, but let's just do what we used to do because I'm comfortable with it. Because
Future of
I've done it for 15, 20 years. And I get it. I'm not criticizing those leaders. Um, but when we've had the opportunity to move into that space and get results through this, it's a different world. It really is. And we really don't want HR to be the blocker for business to get benefit. Some of the associate groups I'm working with now, they don't respond to RFPs from HR. They only
Oh.
respond from their operations or their strategy teams and organizations.
Mm.
Because often HR doesn't hold the budget, it's often held with operations, it's held with wherever. So again, I think the game is shifting there. The business is selecting its own development, not necessarily through HR in larger numbers than we've seen previously. Um, Centralized HR is for soft skills, right? The human skills that actually make the real difference in the real world. Technical
Yes.
skill, 80% technical skills are held. So yeah, it's a change in time, and how we approach that. I've got it wrong many times. Probably 50% of my career, I've got it wrong. And I think that lesson is very important. What do we get wrong doing this? I think that's the bit that we have to help people with. Yeah. But it's been an
Absolutely.
absolute pleasure, Spain. Thank you for the invitation. Really appreciate it. And maybe a part two, maybe a part two.
I would love that, Dr. Adrian. Thank you very much. I found your insights extremely valuable. I loved listening to your examples, and you were explaining everything in such a great way with such a nice amount of detail. So, thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful weekend and the best of luck with everything that's gonna come your way for the end of the year. And I will really hope for a continuation of this conversation.
Yeah, I look forward to it, Samin, and let's keep in touch on these topics. I think we've just done the high level, and I think there's lots to really get our teeth into. So yeah, I look forward to that. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend, and
Thank you.
let's connect again soon.
We will. Thank you very much.